This is the Abarth 124, and as you know if you watched my last video, I recently drove this car nearly 2,000 miles from my house in East London through 6 countries, over the Alps, and finishing here in Foggia, southern Italy. But, while that video is a lot of fun and well worth a watch if you've not seen it yet, one thing we kind of forgot to do was talk about the car. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. Because there's a lot to talk about. Let me start by saying this. I've often found that when it comes to driving a new car, especially a performance car, it's a little bit like a new relationship. There's a honeymoon phase at the beginning where it's new and it's exciting and really you're just happy it's happening. But eventually the honeymoon phase ends and they begin to annoy you a little bit. Little things like the snoring or the weird cup holders. I mean, what's that? Having driven this car for over 2,000 miles now, I can safely say that the honeymoon phase is officially over. And you know what? It's not perfect, but I adore this car. Let's start with the basics. The Abarth 124 is a rear-wheel drive sports car available exclusively with a lovely, notchy 6-speed manual gearbox. To justify the price hike over the Fiat 124, the Abarth has some more aggressive exterior styling, a limited slip diff, and 30 more horsepower, bringing the total up to a still modest 168. The Abarth also gets a sport button, which sharpens throttle response, adds weight to the steering, and relaxes the traction control. Although, with less than 200 horsepower to play with, my advice would be live a little and turn it off completely. It is worth noting that the 124 shares a few of its bits with another lightweight, low-powered sports car, the Mazda MX-5. In fact, it's built by Mazda, and there are even a few Mazda badges to be found under the bonnet. But don't think that this car is just an exercise in badge engineering, because while much of the 124 is Japanese, the heart and the soul are pure Italian. Abarth's main contribution to this car is the engine. It's the same 1.4 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder you'd find in the 595, and in this car it is a little bit less powerful. But would you listen to it? And by the way, it sounds like that all the time. All the time. Sport mode on, sport mode off, driving slow, doesn't matter. It's a screamer. Another very Abarthy thing about this car is the power delivery. If you've driven a 595, you know what I'm about to say. It's that big blob of boosty anger when you get halfway up the rev range. Because the boost is so aggressive, it really increases the sense of speed in the car. It makes it feel like you're going really fast, even though you're probably not. Does it bother me that so much of this car is borrowed from the Mazda MX-5? No! If you're going to copy your homework, do it from the smartest kid in class. By the way, I should point out that this gorgeous retro rally livery that this car has is not an optional extra, it's just something Abarth decided to do with their press car for funsies. It's also the most conspicuous car that you could possibly drive through Italy. I would have gotten less stares on my way down here if I'd been driving a regular Abarth with the Pope in the passenger seat. The 124's handling, as you'd expect from a car based on the MX-5, is delightful. The steering is quick and direct, but the car's party piece is its damping. That's actually the thing I was the most worried about with this car ahead of this road trip, because I've driven the 595 and I found the ride in that to be fairly bone-shattering. And if this car had ridden the way that one did, I probably would have made it to Dover and then driven into the sea. But it's not. It's brilliant. Abarth has tuned this car so that it is a bit firmer than the Mazda MX-5, firm enough that it feels like a proper sports car, but it's also supple. I've driven this car on all sorts of roads on this trip, some of them bumpy, some of them unmade, and nothing has troubled it. And when you combine that with the modest power output, what you have is a sports car that you can drive really hard all the time, very confidently. It's even a decent motorway cruiser. Who knew? Another thing I like is the convertible roof. I was a bit displeased to find out it's a manual, not electric, given this is not a cheap car, but it's actually really good. In fact, it's so good that I can do it while talking to you without even looking before I finish the sentence. Okay, let's talk downsides, because there are a couple of things that have begun to bug me about this car. And the first one is cabin space. Now, I realise it's a small car and I'm a giant man and it's actually a miracle that I fit at all, but it just feels a bit more cramped than it needs to be. The transmission tunnel is huge and this bit of dash here kind of sticks out a bit more than it should. I'll be honest with you, my back's seen better days than it has after this road trip. Another one that slightly bugs me, and this is the most Italian thing about this car, is the sport button. It's a little up and down dial over here, and to put it into sport you push it up, and then to take it out of sport you push it either up or down. Why wasn't it just a button? But look, these are very minor complaints, and they're the only ones I've been able to come up with on a 2,000-mile road trip. And frankly, when it comes to Italian sports cars, you expect a few compromises, a few little annoying things. It's kind of part of the fun. Ironically, this Abarth sports car is very practical. It's got a big boot, it's light on fuel, it's got good infotainment system, it's comfortable. Do you want to know what the biggest downside is with this car? In the UK, you can't have one anymore. Back in April of this year, the Abarth 124 and the Fiat 124 were taken off sale. And that means that currently in the UK, you can't buy a brand new Italian sports car. That's tragic. I guess that we're just going to have to hope that sometime in the near future, Abarth or Fiat or Alfa Romeo come up with a new small sports car that we can get our teeth into. But for the time being, the good news is that prices on these second hand are beginning to drop below £20,000. Now, look, that's a lot of money, especially compared to the kind of shod that I'm used to driving. And it's a lot of money for not very much horsepower. You could get a lot of car for 20 grand. But if you're an enthusiast and if you like your cars pure and focused and Italian, you've got to try one of these. You have to. For me, the Abarth 124 is a guaranteed future classic. One of the great small sports cars. It offers all the style, charm and analogue involvement of an old classic and combines it with the practicality and usability of a modern performance car. 20 or 30 years from now, when noisy petrol-powered cars are outlawed, this is the kind of car you'll wish you'd owned while you had the chance. So my advice is to get one while you can.